How's it going? How are the Easter holidays treating you? I hope you're all doing really well. But today, I wanted to talk about a particular problem that comes up in our family a lot and which some of you might also be experiencing. And that problem is children who say no. Do you want to do this? No. Shall we do this? No. Shall we go out for a walk? No. Do you want to try this game? No. I hear no a lot in my house, particularly from one of my children. One of my children's very nervous about trying new things and says no to almost everything that gets suggested. And you do have to be quite creative in engaging your children to be involved in things when they're very nervous and they want to say no. For my child, that comes from anxiety. There's a lot of anxiety around trying new things. There's a lot of fear of failing, of not being able to do it, of looking stupid, of all the things that anybody might be anxious about. And so when anxiety is an issue, obviously that becomes more of an issue when there is general or higher levels of anxiety about as there are at the moment. So you might be having this problem with your children. It may be that you've never had this problem before and it's new to you, or it might be that you're well familiar with it and it's possibly even enhanced at this time, that you're asking your children to do things and you're wanting them to join in with things with you and they just say no, no, no. They just don't want to try. So when we're dealing with this, the thing to think about straight away is what is the source of the problem? If we agree that the source of the problem is anxiety, the first thing to address is the general sense of mood in the house, the general level of calm, the general level of anxiety amongst everybody that's in the home. So first of all, try and make sure you're doing everything you can to lower everyone's anxiety, to keep people's expectations manageable so that nobody feels under pressure, nobody feels too many demands are being placed on them, and that people are not already keyed up before you even start trying to ask them to do something. And this includes you as the parent. Our expectations can sometimes be very high. We may be feeling under pressure to get certain things done. It's the Easter holidays right now, but if you've been being sent home work from school, that might be causing you a lot of pressure. I know of families who are getting work sent home from school, who are having activities sent home from extracurricular activities that their children do. Can you do a dance video and send it in? Can you do a football skills video and send it in? And this is all really well meaning because the people who run those things are just trying to ensure that everybody has something to do and that they're keeping connected with the children. But if you start to feel pressure to engage in all of these things, that raises everyone's anxiety, including the parent. So you as a parent, are you calm? Are you able to handle what's going on? Are you managing your own expectations of yourself at this time? So dealing with your own anxiety will be the starting point, and then you can move on to looking at how anxious your children are and whatever you can do to reduce the level of anxiety in your home. That will be different for each one of you and for each family, but whatever you've done that's worked in the past to reduce anxiety, redouble those efforts now. It's even more important now. So that's the first thing. We know that our children sometimes who've experienced trauma can have what's a low window of tolerance, a small window of tolerance. The space within which they work in a kind of normal level might be smaller than other people's, and they can easily be pushed out of that by anxiety into a hyper kind of fight or flight response, or into a low arousal kind of freeze or dissociation response. And so at this time of increased anxiety, when there's been a lot of changes recently and still a lot of talk of frightening things in the news, our children's windows of tolerance might be even smaller than usual. So don't be worried, don't be surprised if your children are more resistant to trying different things and more resistant to taking a risk than they previously have been. At the moment, a lot of children are being asked to do lots and lots of new things. The whole idea of not going to school and learning from home is a new thing. The whole idea of staying in your house nearly all of the day and not being able to go on play dates and visit people is new, and it will raise anxiety for everybody. We can't remove the source of that anxiety. But if you're looking at individual activities that you are hoping to do with your children, you might be able to find ways to make them less threatening so that your children feel less anxious about doing them. One way that we've found in our house is rather than to ask the children to do it or suggest that they should do it, we just make it available. So I might put out some paints and some craft materials on the table and then just walk away. And it might stay there for hours, and then eventually someone might come along and have a go at it. And when that happens, I don't make a fuss. I don't say, oh, you're finally having a go at that craft activity. Well done you. We don't draw attention to it or make a huge fuss. And sometimes we can get around it that way. We make the activity available, we make the materials available, and then we play it very, very low key. Other times, it depends on everyone's mood and how much people want to be with each other. But I find sometimes that if I start doing the activity, then sometimes they will just come and join me without being asked or without anything being said. This works best with things that I know they already enjoy, which are not necessarily things that I enjoy, but sometimes we do these things. And this works especially well with calming or quiet activities. So colouring, for instance, which is something that can sometimes take the temperature down in our house. If I sit at the table and get out a colouring book and some crayons, eventually somebody might come and join me and sit with me and do that for a while. Another way to approach this is to go with things that are related to the interests of your child. We've talked about this before in earlier videos, but sometimes if we can engage the children with what they are doing now and then perhaps try and develop something out of that, the transition from what they want to do to what you want them to do doesn't seem like such a big transition. So if they're already looking at books, you might be able to just transition that into something a little bit more structured. If they're playing a game, you might be able to transition that into something more structured. If you're already going out for a walk and that's going okay, you might be able to introduce things on the walk that bring a little more structure and interest into the walk. So it's starting with the place where your child is already at and the things they're already committed to doing, and then trying to just add a little bit more and a little bit more onto that without placing heavy demands on them. In some areas of activity, and especially in learning, the source of anxiety, can be within the activity itself. So for one of my children, reading and writing anything has always been an enormous source of activity. And I would say with this, have a look at what it is that is the purpose of what it is you're supposed to be doing. So if it's a writing activity designed to encourage writing, then I will encourage them to actually do the writing. But if the activity is not really to do with writing and they're only using writing as a means to get the answer down so that we can see that they know it, then often I will just scrap the writing element of it altogether. It is important to learn writing. It's not important to learn writing in every activity that you're doing. So when we come across things where we could have accessed this and we could have perhaps done it, but the reading and the writing aspect of it created such a lot of anxiety in my child that we couldn't even attempt it, then I will do the reading and I will do the writing. And that way my child can still access the other part of the activity, the learning part that we were trying to do, and isn't put off by the idea of having to do lots of difficult anxiety-inducing reading and writing around that. Now, that might be the same for you in a lot of other subjects. With my younger child whose writing isn't very good yet, we found that she's really put off doing maths because she struggles to write down the numbers. Well, why do I want her to write down the numbers? Yes, of course she needs to learn to write the numbers, but not every single time we sit down to do some number work. Sometimes it's okay if she knows the answer, if I just write the answer. She's still doing the maths, and we're taking the anxiety and the pressure down by me doing the thing that she finds most difficult and most worrying about doing that activity. So in any activity that you're hoping that your children will do, have a look at what's being asked of them in that activity, and then if parts of it are raising anxiety for them, see if you can remove those parts, but the child will still have some valuable experience from the activity that you're trying to do. The most important thing we can do, as I said earlier, is to make our house as calm and as soothing and nurturing as possible. So build in lots of these high parental presence activities with your children to keep the temperature of the household down and to keep general anxiety levels lower. And that will hopefully help your children to feel less anxious about trying the things that you're asking them to do. And if it all doesn't work, then just have a brew and a snack and move on to something else. Bye.